Welcome to Still Talking Uncut slash America Moonshine this evening. We're very fortunate to have Damon Beatty from the America Moonshine crew with us tonight. But tonight's a very special night. I reached out to Alan a while ago and asked him if he wanted to come on and talk a little bit about what he's got going on. And he's been a very busy man, and we finally got a date locked down. And here we are on Friday night. Thank you very much, Alan, for joining us.
Yeah, man. Happy to be here and happy to be a part of it and to get a chance to participate in the distilling slash moonshining home distilling community again for a little bit. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So welcome back.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks. I appreciate it. So it's obviously something something I love, the community that I love for sure. And that's why I do, one piece at a time and all that stuff. And, try to throw in and help out where I can. I don't know everything about distilling, but if I don't know something, I probably know somebody that has a good idea anyways. So.
Yeah, you definitely, it used to be when the beard, you were always known as the beard of knowledge, as Big Easy would refer to you as. So now you're the clean shaven knowledge. So
yeah, man, they don't let me have a beard at the new job. One of these days,
a little bit about what you've got going on right now, Alan.
Yeah, so the big thing that just came out is 2 years ago, Eric Wolf and I, for those of you who are not familiar with Stoll and Wolf Distillery out in Lidditz, Pennsylvania, you should definitely check it out. So Eric is a phenomenal distiller, trained by the legendary Dick Stoll of Michter's fame, and has put out some phenomenal rye and bourbons the past several years. Got a crazy high Whiskey Advocate score. I think it was Whiskey Advocate. It's like 93 or 95 on one of the ryes here recently, which is phenomenal for that, for a younger rye in particular, and being from Pennsylvania compared to what, typically gets those sort of awards. But Eric and I sort of knew each other in passing, from him being on Distillers Talk or various other things I've done, but we'd never met in person. And Steve Bayshore, who was in charge of Mount Vernon at the time, Steve, one of the great things about Bayshore is that he is a, how would you even say it? Facilitator of interesting people. So he finds like the most interesting people in the world that would never meet, never typically have a reason to talk with one another. Most of the time, whether it be an archivist or it be an archaeologist or it be a distiller or it be a miller or it be an agronomist, whatever, he would bring them all together at Mount Vernon and we'd all get to work together for various amounts of time. But he wanted to make sure he got me and Eric both at Mount Vernon. And so within, a couple hours of being there hanging out with Eric, like we just kind of hit it off, like a brotherhood sort of thing developed pretty quickly. And Mount Vernon is, or at least was, specifically underneath Bayshore's auspices, it was very much a like a sacrosanct, right? If you're a distiller, you want to go to Mount Vernon. You want to go distill at Mount Vernon. It's cool. Why wouldn't you, right? You're on the footprint of Washington's old distillery. You're there where Anderson was distilling daily alongside the slaves as well, walking in those footsteps, doing things that old way. And it's hard work. It's labor intensive. It's smoky. It's nasty. It's not nearly as glamorous as the photos make it out to be. You guys know how distilling is. But in that place, we had this moment where we're rolling mash and Eric looked at me. He's like, we've done this before, right? Sort of that previous life sort of thing. And so we started talking about doing a project. And originally the project was, I selfishly wanted to go to Pennsylvania because I wanted to make a Pennsylvania rye whiskey because I love the history of distilling in Pennsylvania. And I love, if you guys know that followed me, any chance I get to go to a state that is not Kentucky and contribute to their history, and not that I don't love Kentucky, my family's all from Kentucky, but they get the spotlight more than enough. Any chance I get to do that, I'm always happy to go do it because those are the states that need, a little bit more help to get the attention. So we kicked back and forth all these mash bills and all these ideas. And I wanted to use oats. We wanted it to be a rye whiskey, and we just so happened to both have this book by a gentleman named Frederick Heinrich Gelwick, who was a shoemaker and distiller, as one does. It was a account book, and it's literally just where he's writing out who owes him money for what, or who he paid money to. the guy was selling as much liquor as he was shoes, so he must have been pretty good at both things, right? Selling spirits and souls, as it were. But within that book, there was also part of this pamphlet that had been published that when you look into whiskey history, you do not typically find, before about 1845, 1850, you won't find mash bills. They didn't write like that. They wrote much more like a magician would write a grimoire. So they'd give you a basic outline of like special things you can do, followed by, but then do as you know how to do, right? And it doesn't give you like a percentage or anything. But this had 3 mash bills, or close to mash bills in it, that were measured out by bushels and pecks. So this one mash bill was 1 bushel of rye, 1 bushel of wheat, 1 bushel of rye malt, and 3 pecks of oats to 120-gallon hogshead fermenter. And we decided that's it. That's what we're going to do, right? We came up with this whole idea at Mount Vernon to work together in this kind of liminal space. We found this crazy mash bill that was tied to the colonial era, named after a specific guy who's a shoemaker and distiller, which doesn't seem like a bad gig to me. It seems, but people need their drinks and their shoes, so it's all good. You're going to make money one way or the other. And so we started that project 2 years ago on Leap Day of all days, right? A day that only happens once every 4 years. And the only rules were, or sort of the outline was the following. You have all these legendary stories about all these distillers that came in, via Germany, Ireland, Scotland, Wales, etc., onto the East Coast, started distilleries, and then they came west, ended up in Kentucky, the Beams, etc. But you never have heard a story where a distiller went from what was Western frontier back to the East Coast, taking those old methods that were brought into Indiana and Ohio, etc., and continued to evolve from that German heritage, in particular in Pennsylvania. You never see people take those skills back to the East Coast. So we used a couple different of my yeast strains. And then we also used, in some of the distillates, we used some dried apples and some dried raisins, because that would have been something they had access to. And of course, Indiana was the apple brandy capital of the world for a very, very long time. So the rules were to stay as close as we could with fermentation to the colonial style, paying tribute to Indiana and Pennsylvania. Of course, it's not a pot still, it's a column still, but a very different type of column still than what you'd see in Kentucky, where you have low rec column stills. Eric's is much more tunable. It has a thumper, not dissimilar to a thumper you'd see on a pot still, but it actually has a couple plates in it. And you can really tune that thing to, if you guys taste this whiskey, you'll be incredibly surprised that this is not a pot still whiskey, because it drinks exactly like a pot still whiskey. So long short of it, we laid 13 barrels down, different variations. Eric pulled two or 3 barrels, I can't remember, I think 2 barrels, and made a blend, and we just released it for the I refuse to call it the America 250, it's the US 250, right? That's what it is the US 250. So we released that on the 4th of July, and it's done incredibly well for us. It's the closest thing, in my opinion, that you're going to get to a colonial whiskey in terms of the way that it was made, the mash bill, etc. It's not exactly colonial because we did mature it for 2 years in new oak barrels, but it's pretty damn good. Pretty damn good. And you can get it now. You can order it, I think 48 states through stolenwolf.com. So I know that was long-winded as hell. I apologize.
That's why you're here.
Yeah, we're here to listen to you speak. Yes, not us.
I'm looking that up right now. I'm going to order me a bottle.
It's pretty damn good, man. I did a tasting note video on it. And then Whiskey Cast, what is his name? Mark Gillespie was very pleasantly surprised. He gave it a 92 or a 93, which for a 2-year rye is, and coming from him in particular, where he's a pretty picky guy as far as being critical of whiskeys, and I was very pleasantly surprised that it did as well as it did with him. So, so far so good. I even I normally don't look up reviews on Reddit because those guys will just eat you alive, but it's actually got decent reviews on Reddit. So I'll take that all day long.
Are they using rye and the grain specifically from Pennsylvania, or is it coming from other regions, or?
No, all the grain, every bit of grain in there came from Pennsylvania. It is rosin rye. and malted rosin rye. The oats came from Pennsylvania. The white wheat came from Pennsylvania. That's also an interesting thing too. So other than the oats being in there, which were pretty commonly grown in Pennsylvania, seeing wheat in a colonial era whiskey is incredibly rare, because you got to remember that wheat was used for food. So at various different times in England and the United States, or what would become the United States, it was actually illegal to distill wheat itself into a spirit because it was needed for food. So this would have, even at that time, that mash bill would have been kind of considered a premium or a luxury sort of product that very few other distillers would have ever have made or had the means to be able to make in the first place. And certainly, I told somebody on an interview we did the other day, I am absolutely confident, because we have this, a lot of modern day legal distillers have this sort of view of the old distillers making, rot gut whiskey and not very good stuff. And it's not true. They were closer to the roots of alchemy than what any of us are. They understood what distillation was all about and what you were they understood the assignment, right? I have no doubt that this whiskey would have been excellent back then. And I also have no doubt that I could, if I had access to a DeLorean, I could take this whiskey back to colonial times and drop this in front of some of those guys, and they would have known exactly what it was and exactly where it came from. So at least as far as its origins go.
Well,
That's pretty fucking cool.
Distilling and using the grains that they would use, I'm sure it makes
as much as possible.
Yeah.
Well, the cool thing too is we laid out, like I said, I think there were 13 barrels total we've done so far over a few sessions. And we don't, you guys know me, and if you follow Eric, it'd be pretty easy to see. We're not the kind of guys that have rules generally, but the one sort of like guideline that we have for this project, because we'll keep doing this going into the future, is that for now, at least, we're going to always stick to that mash bill. But we're going to do variations on it using things that they might have had access to. That book, by the way, was written just south of the county that Eric lives in. So it's right on the Pennsylvania-Maryland border, which is kind of cool. But, they would have had access to raisins. They would have had access to dried apples. Another thing we talked about doing is they would have had access, at least around Christmas time, to some citrus imports, because Pennsylvania Dutch love to use dried citrus for Christmas ornaments in particular. And they wouldn't have thrown those out after Christmas, right? They would have used them for something somewhere. So we might do a citrus variation. And we even talked about potentially doing a colonial era gin where we would use that whiskey mash bill as the base spirit, and then actually go do Eastern red cedar berries, which are truly a juniper themselves, and some local botanicals to try to create a rye whiskey based gin. So
the project you just worked with, now, was any of that left behind in a barrel to age longer, or was all of it bottled and barreled up or bottled up?
No, he only blended 2 of those barrels. So I 2 or 3 of those barrels. So we have 10 or 11 barrels left currently. We also have there was another project that we did with Paul Menta, and I think we have a barrel of it that we haven't done anything with, which was a corn and molasses based colonial. It's not really a rum, but it's kind of a rum influenced sort of thing that we use some crazy yeast and some crazy methodologies on too, and that's set back as well. I don't know if that'll come out under Wolf and Wilson, but it's definitely a project that we have together. It may be a different name or something down the road, but yeah, there's definitely 10 or 11 barrels set back. They're actually aging in a colonial era tobacco barn, which is pretty damn cool for a warehouse, I think. So
That's pretty fucking awesome there.
yeah. I've been drunk in that warehouse, and it was probably the most fun I ever had drunk in my entire life was in that warehouse. So truly, we almost, if you're a distiller, and you guys know this to some degree, but if you have a third friend who is not a distiller or a home distiller, but he likes to make cider, Aiden Pemberton, never let your non-distiller friend choose which barrels to sample, and in the night with a high proof barrel aged gin, because you will have officially killed your friend for at least half to 3/4 of the day the next day.
Wow.
Lesson learned.
Lesson learned.
Yeah, unless it's Uncle Joey.
Mm.
No, I don't usually learn. I might be down for a little bit, but yeah, I don't usually
You
learn.
power through like a trooper.
Yeah. Those barrel tastings are hard to pass up.
It was a bad deal, guys. That was during that veterans workshop that we had a few years ago that Amanda and JJ were at, and poor Aiden. That was the day of the veterans workshop, and man, I don't know. I was laying on the air mattress in the little apartment building, and Aiden is like 6'7" or some monstrous Peter Still looking bullshit, and we call him Sam Squanch. I heard him get up about 3 o'clock in the morning. He was trying to be as quiet as he could, walking across the floor, and he's just making noise. Just I hear him go in the bathroom. Have you ever heard anybody try to quiet puke where they don't want anybody to hear them?
I'm guilty of that.
Yep. I was like, yeah, Aiden's in a bad way, but we got him right. He made it. Did a presentation and everything. So love him to death.
Nice.
Yeah. Other than that, the other big thing. So right now, I'm currently not. I'm not employed full time in the distilling industry for the first time in 12 years, which is kind of interesting. How
do you, when you wake up in the morning, is that a different feeling right now?
It is for sure. So it's, a little bit of a growing and reflection period, and probably a little bit of a part of what I've been working on for over a year now, which is some shadow work that I need to do with laying off drinking. I'm having a drink or two here with you guys tonight because I thought now was an appropriate time to do as such. But, trying to work on myself and also step outside of anytime that you are in a position in your life where you have identified yourself specifically with the thing that you do for a living or the thing that you do for a hobby, and that's all you identify yourself as, it's probably a good time to step back and take a look at yourself and kind of humble yourself a little bit and figure your shit out and get straight a little bit. So it's also not a great time in the distilled spirits industry, right? There's still opportunity there, but right now things are down pretty heavy, not just in bourbon, but in a lot of the spirits industry. Now, again, there is opportunity there. It's just a matter of finding the things that people are looking for, and a lot of that is one of two things at this point. It's either things that very much so resemble the more common bar culture of like the late 90s, early 2000s, or experiential, very odd, very strange liqueurs and cordials and things of that nature. I tell you what, though, I've got a lot of friends that own mid-sized distilleries, and a lot of them are struggling right now, and I feel pretty bad for them because some of them are 10 years in. They shouldn't be struggling. They've got good product. It's just the market has shifted and people aren't buying as much. And it's a little different not working in the industry. I'm distilling adjacent, so I work for a place that does a lot of bar back mixer stuff, right? So they do like Real syrups, and they do finest call cocktail mixes and master of mixes and that sort of stuff. So it's still a related field. It's a lot like mashing in over and over and over and over and over again all day long. But I will also tell you that now that I've had a little time to be there and look at things and look at processes, I have zero doubt whatsoever that particular job / career choice will have already made me a better distiller than what I was in terms of the understanding of ingredients, process, and cleaning, and improvements that can be done to distillation equipment as well. For sure, 100%. So worthwhile. I kind of look at it as like going to college to some degree, because I'm getting to learn a lot of stuff that I wouldn't otherwise, and work with a lot of ingredients I would never get to work with otherwise. And it's also nice to be able to, I told my wife, like, it feels strange cosplaying as a quote unquote normal human and being able to come home and not not have 8 million emails, not have 8 million text messages, not feel compelled that you have to do every single interview or podcast or this or that or the other, and really be able to enjoy certain parts of my life that I hadn't necessarily got to the past 12 years. Not to say again that I won't get back into that line of work full time at some point, but it's actually a nice little respite, and it's given me a really cool opportunity. And that one of the things I've wanted to do for many years now is to start teaching classes, and also to start releasing my own labels. So many years ago, well, 2017 or so, my dad and I helped set up a little distillery in New Albany, Indiana, right around the corner from where I work, called Donham Day Distillery. They're actually a brew distillery is what they call themselves. So little bitty place, excellent beer. They've had some phenomenal spirits as well. I think the previous owner, he struggled with it financially a little bit, I think, for a while. But then during COVID, he kind of became like the neighborhood hangout. And so it developed this crazy cult following of people who are just absolutely in love with it in New Albany. And Richard recently retired and sold the business to a really good guy named Jonathan Broadway and his wife. And Jonathan had never distilled before. So Rick put me in contact with Jonathan. I went down and had a nice little meeting with him. Listen, no paperwork, no contracts, none of that stuff. Just two guys having a conversation and meeting and trying to come to a good understanding. And I think it's going to work. That I'm going to be doing a lot of consulting for them and advising on products and recipe formulation and stuff on the side. And then sort of in exchange for that, I'll get still time and be able to release labels of my own underneath their banner and in their tasting room, and be able to hold classes there. And some of you guys might have seen that I posted the idea of doing some bad motivator barrels that, maybe we make a run and we fill 10 or 12 or 14 bad motivator barrels, and that only gets made that one time, and you can buy that barrel, and still got to figure out all the logistics of that, whether or not that goes with you guys as White Dog and you guys mature it, or we store the barrel and then bottle it and you guys get the bottles in the barrel, or however it ends up working. I don't know, but I don't know. There's a lot of freedom in being able to do that, right? That's a little more like walking the line between being a home distiller and a legal distiller than what I've done previously.
I like that.
Yeah, I think it's cool.
When you posted it and we were reading it, I immediately sent that to Sean. I was like, man, this is a cool idea. It's really the concept is a neat thing. It really is. Yeah,
I think it will be too. If we keep them on site, it might even be that if you're sort of funding it up front, right? That when you come in there, we know what barrel is yours, obviously. And so if it's already funded, it's already tax paid, and we don't have to hold in a bonded area. You may even be able to do, I got to look into the legality of all this stuff, but may even be able to do sampling right out of your barrel right there at the distillery. So there's a lot of different options, a lot of different ways you could play it. And I think it would, I just think it'd be cool in general. I think it'd be cool too to make sure it's limited runs of all those things. Like we do that mash bill, or maybe it's not even a bourbon, maybe it's a brandy, maybe it's a distilled spirit specialty, one time and never do it again. Fill the barrels out of that. Yeah, I think people like that sort of thing. So,
oh yeah,
and
I hope
I'm
so.
sure you being in Indiana, it's probably a little easier than our wonderful state of Ohio that we live in, and all the regulations and red tape and hoops and all that garbage that we have.
There's a lot in Indiana too. Don't feel bad. They've lessened it up a little bit. One of the cool things we have now is we can do, I think it's up to 10,000 gallons. We can do self-distribution within the state up to 10,000 gallons, I believe, which is not a lot, but for a little place like Donham Day, that's a substantial drop in the bucket, right? Especially if you're cutting out all the middlemen. You don't have to deal with the middlemen anymore, and you just go directly to the stores and specialty accounts and stuff like that. But there's still plenty of red tape for sure. There's Ohio has the same problem that Indiana has. We're both in that sort of, especially Southern Ohio, Southern Indiana, we're both sort of in that circle of places that couldn't decide whether they wanted to be Quaker or they wanted to be Southern-leaning Peace Democrats, and that led to a lot of very strange alcohol laws based on the Knights of the Golden Circle being, in the House of Reps and the Senate in both states back in the 1870s that still lingers to this day. So makes it hard for all of us without a doubt. So
Yeah, they definitely don't make it easy. And, you would think they would want to make it easy because some of these distilleries are going to make money, which puts money back in their pocket. And it's a whole, they're making money and they're holding somebody up from making them money. And it doesn't make sense. And it's sad. You talk to these guys and, we've talked to several distillery owners and, they have to have multiple attorneys to get this done. And it shouldn't be that difficult, but unfortunately it is.
Yeah, it really shouldn't be. It should be pretty straightforward. And they definitely don't make it easy. If you think about it, a legal distiller, it doesn't even have to be a distillery owner. But think about this for a minute. Let's take somebody who's in a situation where maybe they don't own a distillery, but they were like me, right? They were creating all the products, creating all the stories, laying everything out, etc. Name someone who's taxed harder than a distiller on their skill level when you think about it. When you think about the amount of excise tax, state and federal, you think about the taxes coming out, of your employment check, etc. Name another skill that's taxed as heavily as what being a distiller is taxed. Because I've thought about it many times over the years, and I never could come up with anything that's taxed as heavily as what that is. Really, I mean, yes, you're taxing the product, but technically you're taxing. It's just an added tax onto the talent who creates those things in an industry, by the way, where for years when I was growing up, I didn't know anybody. I couldn't call somebody and be like, hey, can I come to your distillery and you teach? Well, I had people I could talk to, obviously, but they weren't on the legal side. So you have to almost start illicitly to be able to even get the skills to be in that kind of a situation. Right. So I don't know. It's a very strange industry, that's for sure.
Well, that's all. I think it's kind of wild right now. I didn't mean to interrupt you there, but a lot of the distilleries with a lot of the old time distillers, that's how they learned was on the illegal side. You know what I mean? And I feel like we talked to some of these these head distillers now, and they didn't do much illegal distilling. They've got college degrees and they jump right into it from that aspect, which is fine. But it's crazy the modern times how there's way more of that style of distillers than there are that came up through the illegal side of it.
Yeah, well, and that's part of the thing with the Kentucky quote unquote heritage, right? Now, some people really do have a heritage in Kentucky, obviously, right? That they can trace back either to illicit or to legal distillers, one way, shape, form, or the other. But you look at the modern industry post-prohibition. Well, you look at any of the big names that you know of that were master distillers at the big distilleries for the most part, with a couple of exceptions. A guy like Elmer T. Lee at Buffalo Trace was not a master distiller, and he wasn't even really a distiller. He was a plant manager. It was a factory. That's what he did, was manage the plant, right? It's just that the master distiller title was romanticized and easy to get behind, but you can trace it back to prohibition. Really is where it starts to go wrong. And I've even started to develop my own doubts about how much prohibition was really pushed by the temperance movement or even the peace Democrats versus how much it was pushed by people at, say, Shenley or Seagram's, etc., who are trying to really tighten down on whiskey supply and stocks and get rid of the competition. But you look at prohibition, you're talking 12 years where these guys are without a job, these guys that were trained the old-fashioned way, even in the legal industry, right? And that's a generation. And if those guys were already, let's say they were in their mid-50s, by the time prohibition ends, they're either dead or they ain't doing it no more. That's when the real master distillers, for the most part, in the legal industry died out. Now, obviously, there's a lot of backwoods guys and a lot of moonshiners that were still around, and thank God they were. I think one of the reasons that I've been blessed enough to have the career that I have had and done the things that I've been able to do is because I learned from people who were never quote unquote properly trained, which is good because you're not sort of crippled by the dogma of the Seagram's methodology, right? You don't necessarily know the quote unquote right way. So you try a whole bunch of different ways until you find a few that work. And it wasn't really until many years later that I was able to look through history and go, hey, that weird thing that you or your dad or your grandpa or your great grandpa came across that you've always done that you thought was a weird way of doing it. Turns out people were doing that in the 1800s, right? It just got lost somewhere along the way, and we re-stumbled into it. And so I'm grateful for those guys, without a doubt. I would have never had a job doing this without them.
So, a random question. So, at what point in your, I'm gonna say, I guess, career, or when you were learning to distill or whatever, at what point did you realize this is what I need to do? You know what I mean? Where you take it from a hobby to.
I don't know. I'm not much of a planner, truly. So I think it necessity, right? So just like now, I mean, part of this is necessity. You got to have a job, right? Lucky enough to have a job that's related, or at least adjacent to distillation. I would say that getting into this career-wise was twofold. I'd been a farmer for 8 or 9 years, and there really wasn't consistent money in that. It was either feast or famine. You either were on top of the world or were at the bottom of the hill in a ditch below the hill. Followed by, I'd been just dumb enough to run my mouth and distribute enough stuff that word had gotten out about what I was doing to people who otherwise should have had no idea what the hell I was doing. And so people were, right around the time that the first season of Moonshiners rolled out, and all of a sudden it was popular, right? I'd been doing this since I was a teenager, and really had been doing it with my dad and my grandpa since I was a kid. But right around the time that first season of Moonshiners rolled around, it got super popular. There were people coming up to me at parties and stuff with jars, talking to me about my liquor. And my wife was not, my now wife was not having that shit. It was not, that was not going to be an okay thing, right? You got to go get a job doing this. And thank God I knew how to do that, because honestly, guys, I don't have any discernible modern skills. But if it doesn't involve agriculture, history, or distillation, or the esoteric, or storytelling, I'm kind of pretty much just fucked. There's not a whole lot else I've got going on. So I think that's how it happened. Honestly, it was just, I knew that I wanted to do this because I enjoyed doing it. I was good at it. It was agriculture adjacent, or agriculturally adjacent. There weren't really any distilleries here in Indiana at that time. There were, but it's like MGP, Starlight was doing a little bit with brandy. Indiana hadn't really opened up their distilling license the way it is now. So I just put in, I wrote the world's dumbest resume and turned it in. Every time I saw a craft distillery was opening anywhere around Louisville, I turned in a resume to every single distillery that opened. I turned them into Peerless, Angel's Envy, long before even Angel's Envy was built. Copper and Kings, whatever Prohibition used to be called. I can't, or maybe that's what it was called, Prohibition. I can't remember what it is now. I don't know. I turned in resumes 5 or 6 places probably, and Copper and Kings is the only one that ever called back. So, and I don't think they called back because they thought I was anything special. I suspect they called back because they knew they could get me for cheap because I was desperate, is my guess. So, but okay, it got me in the door.
I'd like to mention that Uncle Joey's cheap too, but
cheapest.
Right. What are you guys going to pay me? $34,000 a year. Well, that sounds like a whole lot more than the hot dog money I've been making at the farmer's market on the weekend. Let's go. Sign me up.
nice.
So what you talking about your history with agriculture? So what's probably your most favorite? What are your favorite grains to use for distillation?
Oats are definitely my favorite grain. I wouldn't say favorite. Let's say probably the most versatile of the flavoring grains in terms of what they can do to the mouthfeel and how they can adjust flavors in particular. I love rye, but I'm very particular about rye fermentation and a rye cook and what I like out of that and what I don't like. I'm not a big fan of the quote unquote Indiana style of rye that MGP makes. I know a lot of people do like that, but if rye has a dill flavor to it, count me out. I don't want anything to do with it. I like dill. I don't want it in my whiskey, right? I might want it in aquavit. That's fine. As far as like specific varietals, corn in particular, mostly the varieties that I've bred myself are varieties that other people that I've known from my plant breeding days have bred. There was a brilliant seed breeder out in Corvallis, Oregon, Alan Capular, Alan Mushroom Capular. All my heroes always had, you know, some weird nicknames. So like Alan Mushroom Capular, and of course Popcorn Sutton, and then what the hell was that other guy's name? You guys ever hear of a guy that called himself Catfish? He was an herbalist back in the 70s and 80s. Went on the late night show. Catfish Gray, that was his name. But Alan Capular was the founder of what ended up becoming Seeds of Change, and then he also ran a little seed company from his little home garden that was called Peace Seeds. And he did some really amazing work with some really unique corn genetics throughout the 80s and 70s, 80s, and 90s, including a lot of very high carotenoid and anthocyanin corns. And I was fortunate enough to have Alan share a lot of that stuff with me over the years that I could breed into new projects. I guess as far as heirlooms, man, Boone County White's a pretty good corn. It's also an Indiana native corn. I like it a lot. I love high anthocyanin crops in general. So maize morado or Kasuli corn. I really like carotenoids in general, and not just so carotenoids are the orange color that you get in like high beta carotene orange flint corn. But I also like carotenoids in general, and even in distillation and things like winter squash. The darker orange it is, the darker you can select for. If you can get on the verge of being almost red, there's some really, really cool compounds that can distill over from that sort of stuff. So it's not so much varietals as it is phenotypic traits, right? But those have to also be, for me, because I'm obsessive compulsive about everything, they have to also be able to be a utility crop. So in other words, I'd like to be able to grow the damn thing, right? Because that's right. What all this distillation stuff stems from, is growing it and distilling it. So that's probably not the most commercialized way to look at it, but that's the way that I prefer to look at it. You know, in my romanticized worldview, that's how I would see myself as a farmer, distiller, sometimes storyteller, esotericist. I'm the weird neighbor, you know. So, and I'm okay with that. I've come to terms with it at this point in my life. It just is what it is.
I'm also I'm new to distilling. By no means am I any kind of expert or know much about it. I don't ever really claim that I know much about it, but what I do know, I've discovered that oats are a very interesting thing to use when you're making a mash. It can give you an earthiness. It can give you a mouthfeel. It can kind of take a little bit, if you're trying to maybe take something away from a grain that you're using, it kind of brings it down a little bit even. So I'm very intrigued by oats. I actually just recently have some oats in a mash right now because I'm a bourbon drinker by that's kind of how I got started. I was on a bourbon podcast per se, and then we got kind of introduced to the moonshine guys, and I liked the moonshine. But then when I discovered moonshine that had oats in it, it's a very bourbon-esque feel, and I really enjoy that in my moonshine. So moving forward with a lot of things that I'm going to make myself, I'm going to use a lot of oats, and I know there's various kinds of oats, so I'm excited to kind of use different kinds and just kind of experiment with all of it.
Well, it's interesting to hear you say that too, because the Lee W. Sinclair mash bill I did at Spirits of French Lick, and I'd done previous to that at Copper and Kings, that got released as a mic drop release. There's only 2 barrels from Copper and Kings, and those bottlings went for crazy high dollar. Enough that I couldn't afford one. I actually had a guy reach out to me that had bought one and sent me and my dad a sample, because it was the first legal bourbon that I'd ever made, and the first legal bourbon my family had ever made in Kentucky. So I was lucky enough to get a little sample of it. But that mash bill, which was 60 corn, 17 wheat, 13 oats, and 10 malts, that started off as a moonshine mash bill, right? That was the first mash bill that I came up with when I was 15, and really got started on my own. And it made a hell of a bourbon. It did well enough that, you know, it definitely drew some big name attention in the bourbon industry without me having to. There was no pay for play on my behalf because my company wasn't paying shit to promote nothing. It was just people checking it out, and I was just mouthy enough that they looked at it and, you know, liked it. But I love oats too because, as you said, the mouthfeel thing, and that's because they are full of long chain fatty acids in particular. It is hard to find named oat varieties, and that's a shame. They're the USDA ARS GRIN system, which is the nationwide germplasm seed bank. They have a lot of named varieties, but you just don't see people growing them out on scale enough to be able to get a hold of them, which sucks because it would be great. But just in general, oats, and they can be even quick oats, rolled oats, cut oats, whatever. Listen, if you want a little bit of a cinnamon phenol from your rye whiskey, throw a little bit of oats in there. You're going to get a little bit of cinnamon phenol out of it because you're going to get some really interesting modifications that happen with the azerotypes from fermentation through distillation. They also, I tend to think of them as I don't really know if there's a proper term for this, but I call it flavor bridging. So and I always use the example of cinnamon. So if you want like true red hot cinnamon and you want it naturally, right? You can't just use cinnamon. You have to use cinnamon, you have to use cayenne pepper, and you have to use Ceylon cinnamon, or you won't get that red hot sort of flavor because those things all sort of bridge together. And oats kind of work like that too, almost like a binder. The other thing that works very similar to that is very small amounts of licorice root, because licorice root does not taste like licorice. And it has a really, really cool effect on mouthfeel and modifications of flavors. Those are licorice root and oats are probably licorice root in botanical distillation, and oats in whiskey distillation are probably the two biggest cheats in natural distillation, right? You know, not counting chemical additives, etc., which is not has not in true liqueurs and true spirits for me has not been something I've been fond of. I don't mind it in liqueurs and cordials necessarily. Sometimes just depends on what I'm working on, but yeah, I don't know. I can go either way about it. I can get real dorky and real preachy about keeping it as straight up and straightforward as it can be, or I can also go to, yeah, but we're a country that's in love with sugar, so let's just do the thing, you know.
Damon, have you ever used oats? Damon?
Yes, sir.
Nice. So what if some of you guys are anybody here that is using oats? What are some of the mash bills you guys have used them in? Because I'm always here to learn as well as to talk. So I'd love to hear some of the examples where you guys have used them and what kind of amounts, you know, percentages and that sort of thing.
I always just wing everything, so
just throw it and go.
Yeah, that's what I did. Actually, last one I run, it was just corn and oats.
Yeah, I just did 50 pounds of cracked corn, and I put 8 pounds of oats in it.
That's
Nothing wrong
probably
with
close what I did.
Yeah.
I've just recently started writing down whatever I'm doing. I used to just wing everything, and I'm like, well, if I want to recreate something, occasionally I do make something that's decent. So if I want to recreate it, I got to remember how I did it. So
Sure,
I
rub it
right
in.
now. Yeah, I just said occasionally.
You know, for years, I was sort of like the purist guy who was like, hey, stop making sugar shines and make all grain. And even if you're at home and it's a giant pain in the ass and you have to do all the things that you have to do to make all grain at home. And I'll tell you, about 2 years ago, I had this revelation where I was like, listen, I can make good products using sugar as the base and whatever as a flavoring ingredient, right? And there's cool stuff that can be done with that, without a doubt. And I'm going to do some of this at Donum Day too. The thing that I finally came to realize, and it took me years to get there, was, listen, there's so many cool flavors and so much cool shit that you can do in a fermentation that just will not ferment of its own accord. You know what I mean? So you got to have something to ferment, or you don't get that out of it. And it also became like, when I was still home distilling, but I was also, you know, working legally, it also became like, dude, I do this for a living 5 or 6 days a week. I don't want to make an all grain on Sunday. I want to just throw some shit in a barrel and be able to go. You know what I mean? So I've learned to love the versatility of sugar fermentation for sure. And I grew up doing that. I just, everything comes full circle eventually. So
Well,
good spirit's good spirit.
And now you've got a lot more time to go back to the small experimentation style distilling. Not that you weren't doing that on the larger scale, but now you can do that. It's so much smaller. It's so much easier. Yep. You can get back to probably some of your roots and do some playing around with a few things here and there. Because
100%.
You definitely seem like the kind of guy that likes to try new things. I watching some of your videos and some of the things that you've done. It's just I'm like I would have never thought of that, and it's amazing on what you can ferment and distill.
Mm-hmm. It is. It's also amazing too that I kind of hinted to this earlier, but things that every time I think like, oh, I've got a really cool original idea, and then I do it, and then I get, it might be years later, I'll be reading something or going through some archive, and usually it's something out of France. 9 times out of 10, it's either France or Switzerland or the Black Forest of Germany. And then I'll come across almost the exact thing that I did. And I'm like, you didn't create shit. None of us created anything. Somebody's done all of these things long before you were ever born, thought of, conceived. So,
nice.
Yeah.
Good old Tudor Brick Forest over there.
Right. Yeah, so there's I don't know. I think the thing with distillation, I said this many times on One Piece at a Time, Distilling Institute on YouTube, and I think also the podcast. For years. So my whole thing was I got lucky enough that I was able to go from growing up in a family of moonshiners, home distillers, whatever you want to call them, and tobacco farmers, to being able to actually work in distilleries. And also still remain, close with the moonshining community, home distilling community, etc. And I wanted to always be able to sort of bridge that gap. And that's why One Piece existed, right? Was to help, help people that were home distillers that wanted to kind of go to that next level and have those sort of breakthrough sort of things happen. But I forgot where I was even driving with that. Fuck, I had a really cool... See, best laid plans. Fuck it. It'll come back around in a little bit, and I'll tell you guys. So that's what happens. I haven't drank for a while. I'm having a couple, and now I'm not going to remember anything that I wanted to say to you. And so.
So when we were talking about the craft thing, real quick, let's get back to this. Where do you see that? Where do you see craft distillation going over the next 5 or 10 years? Because it's a very interesting place right now.
Well, I certainly wouldn't lay out a business plan that relied on making bourbon for a living. I'll tell you that right now.
Right.
I also think that everybody's put way too much stock into American single malt. Listen, the people who like American single malt are dorks like me and you guys, maybe, and they're beer snobs. But they are not the general public, and even the general drinking public. Most of them, 9 of 10 of them, and this doesn't matter what generation it is, are going to go for a Scotch whiskey before they ever touch your American single malt, because you cannot compete with what Scotland can do in any way, shape, or form. Even if you make better whiskey than they do, the legacy's there, the heritage is there. It's a very niche market. I don't know that it will ever be huge. I think there's room for 2 big single malt producers in the United States, and I think they already exist. And then you can have some regional single malt and stuff like that. I really, really think right now, and probably for this foreseeable future, and let's call this 5-10 years, whatever you want to say, I think staying small and swift and being able to turn on a dime, cut out as many middlemen as possible, and be as diverse as possible, and be ready to understand that the thing that you think might be your next opportunity, your next big thing, probably isn't, and to be able to shut that off and go on and move on about your day. That's kind of where it's going to be at. I think also the more experiential the thing is, in other words, can people go to any other distillery in the United States and get a variation of this? Or is this an exclusive thing to me that nobody else has anywhere? And they couldn't really replicate if they wanted to. I think that's going to play a lot in it. Be a lot of impulse buys and stuff like that. A lot of little 50 mils for, souvenirs or whatever. The current generation's interesting. The guys and gals between 21 and 25, you'll hear a lot about the cannabis market, but I can tell you from talking to retailers and talking to sales folks, they really aren't seeing that interfering with spirit sales that much. They see that interfering more with wine and beer than anything else. But what you do have going on is the kids between 21 and 25 aren't drinking a lot right now, because they're the same kids that went through COVID and saw mom and dad and their brother and sister all drink way too much during COVID. This is a generational turnaround. They'll age out of it to some degree down the road, and the next generation will rebel against that, and it'll come back around, but probably not in the way it has been the past 15, 20 years is my guess. So you got to build those hardcore customers. The big guys, they all made the fatal mistake of way overproducing. And I don't know how, if you guys go back and listen to Distillers Talk, I was talking about a bourbon bubble happening in like 2019, and everybody I ever told that laughed at me, thought it was ridiculous, so that'll never happen. But everybody produced way, way too much. They were aiming for foreign markets. They were aiming for Japan. They were aiming for China. They were aiming for India. They were aiming for the UK. They made the mistake of letting Irish whiskey and Scotch whiskey catch up. They didn't realize that there is no replacement population in any of those countries other than India. And the problem with India is India now has its own distilleries, and bourbon, to them, they don't mind if it's 6 months old, so they can buy it bulk and in cheap. And generally the customer there is not terribly concerned because they're used to drinking younger spirits and prefer that anyways, most of the time. And bourbon also got too caught up in its own pretentious bullshit. Bourbon forgot that all bourbon is corn whiskey. Forgot that it was a blue collar drink, right? Like,
There you go.
and my distilleries have been guilty of this, but when it gets to the point where I, as the distiller, can't afford my own bottle, it's probably gotten a little bit out of hand. So,
yeah.
Some of the bourbon prices are a bit ridiculous, man. There is no doubt about that.
I've said this before and I'll say it again, and I mean this truthfully. Short of having vintage bourbons, from the 40s, or even going back to one of the best things I ever had was an Old Crow bottling from 1880 that came from a grocery store where they'd bought the barrel and bottled it themselves. Short of stuff like that, rare stuff, I have never yet, ever tasted a bourbon that I'd pay more than $100 for. Period. End of story. And $100 is stretching it. It's stretching it, in my opinion. I just wouldn't.
Yeah.
There's very few spirits that I think are worth that. And that's not what for the most part, that's not what they're here for. It's not supposed to be a status symbol. It's supposed to be a moment out of time and out of place, and, to be enjoyed with the right people at the right time and the right circumstances. And I think everybody got a little too pretentious about all that stuff. They're still out there. You see them. They'll see my interviews and hear me say stuff like that and get all kinds of pissed off in the comments. And I don't care.
Wow.
Well, it is true though, man. You speak to nothing but the truth on that one, man. You really do. And you mentioned in the old Crow Distillery, man. I really think it's cool what Dave's doing there, Old Glens Creek. Dave's doing a cool thing there, man. That OCD was it number 5? That's a damn good bottle. It
is. I'm sorry. I did say Old Crow. It was Old Granddad. It was OGD is what it was. I apologize. Yeah. And it was phenomenal. It was, oh my God, it was good. But yeah, some of the vintage Old Crow stuff I've had too. And yes, Glens Creek is doing phenomenal. And hey, he's scale wise, equipment wise, etc. He's very much minded like a home distiller, right?
Oh yeah.
He's not, he ain't paralyzed by conjecture. That's for sure. So.
Yeah, Dave was a fun interview, man. Old Grumpy Dave, as they call him. It was cool to sit down and chat with him as well. That's another one. Yep. I'd like to make it to that grounds, man. Just the history that's on that property. It would be a really cool place to go visit.
when I was a kid, when my grandpa Bishop, who lived here in this house, was still alive. So my family's all, well, on my dad's side, they're all from Greensburg, Kentucky. So we'd go down there several times a year, and we'd always come up through Woodford County, etc. And we broke into that place when I was probably 5 years old because my papa wanted to show it to me. And I remember it clear as day. We went there, and we went to the E.H. Taylor Distillery, Castle and Key. Broke into both of them. Just climbed over the fence and went at it. So, but
That is awesome.
got odd family memories.
So let's talk about your match classes a little bit. I know you've got that going on right now.
Well, we haven't started them yet. I'm planning on having the first class will be this fall sometime, for sure. It'll probably initially be a 1-day class. Eventually, I'll start doing some 2-day classes, and I got to figure out how I want to do this, right? Because one piece at a time has always been under. It's always my presumption that people that follow what I do. There's a lot of beginners classes and beginners videos and stuff out there. I've always been of the presumption that once you've dug to the bottom of the internet, you finally found my stuff. You probably kind of knew what you were doing. So I wanted to be the guy that kind of took that to the next level. So whatever my distilling 101 class is, will be probably a little bit more advanced than a normal distilling 101 class. And so my hope would be doing them at Donum Day starting out, that what I want to be able to offer is a legitimate chance for people to come back and take multiple classes. So it might be distilling 101, and that might include the history of distillation from early alchemy, from Apollonius of Tyana and Maria the Jewess, all the way up until modern distillation, without harping on that for hours and hours on end, but just to give you an overview of, hey, where'd this whole thing come from, right? What was the original intent and the original purpose of this? Then going into fermentation, hitting on grain, hitting on fruit, and hitting on sugar, kind of a base overview, but then also, hey, do you understand beer math? And if you understand that beer math, then do you understand, you sort of have a grasp of your principles and what you can do. So from there, you sort of understand that branching out. And then it'll probably really focus on pot still distillation and the variations on pot still distillation. A lot of it will be hands-on. We'll do a mash in. We'll probably do a little distillation. Probably take home a tax-paid bottle at the end of the day and all that stuff as well. But I want to set the ones up at Donum Day where we can have repeats, right? So maybe you come back and there's an apple brandy class that happens next fall, or there's an absinthe class, or a botanical class, or whatever. And then the 101 classes, if I need to, I can bring those down to a more beginner-based level, and eventually start doing that at a few other distilleries. I've talked to some friends in Missouri. I've talked to some friends out in Iowa. Try to hit some of those places that don't necessarily get as much love in the community, because there aren't as many people there, or many people that you think would be into the art of distillation. But you guys know home distillers are everywhere. So I want to be able to branch into that as well.
So are you looking to do like just traveling around and doing some consulting and stuff like that at different distilleries?
I think at some point that's all. So I still do quite a bit of consulting on the side. Depending on how things go with this new job, etc. I obviously have to be mindful of making sure I keep full-time employment, because I've done consulting enough to know it's feast or famine, just like farming. But yeah, I'm all about being able to consult. So what I do a lot of, in particular, Sean, and what I really like doing is I like doing formula and process development, especially because what I've found, I've done a lot of mash bills, and those are pretty easy to lay out for people, right? All the way down to distillation and maturation protocols. But what I've really found is what really seems to be like the tripping point for most distillers, whether they're home distillers or professional, is botanical distillation. A lot of people just don't have any idea where to start, and it can be overwhelming. I know, because I've been there. I was literally just told one day at Copper and Kings, we need an absinthe. Sure. Okay. Sure. Right. So I get it. And I really like doing that kind of stuff. I think that stuff's cool. The other thing that I love doing, and I don't think people realize this about all the gigs I've had short of Copper and Kings, but those, with the exception of one or two, all those names, all those stories, all that background, all that mythology for all those bottles I ever did, that was either my own research or my own creation. That I like the storytelling aspect, and from a marketing perspective, I like to be able to craft authenticity for people, because I think sometimes people have a hard time with that too. Because immediately when somebody rolls out with a brand of whiskey, for example, there's the joke, the old dead white guy, right? Who's the old dead white guy on your bottle of whiskey? And I've been guilty of that too. But the trick is, if you're gonna do it, find the right old dead white guy and find verifiable facts to where the truth of the story is so much more compelling than whatever the local lore is, that they can't help but notice it, right? I mean, I literally named whiskey after a whore, and it was phenomenal, and everybody loved it, and nobody got mad. I don't know how I didn't get canceled for doing that, but it worked. So, but I like laying out that stuff. I'd like to do more consulting that was more like, just let me lay the whole thing out for you, right? I don't have to have any credit for it, but let me lay out the story. Let me lay out the product. Here you go. Hand it over to you, right? Hand me the cash. Here's your package. Enjoy. Go. Run with it. If you have questions, call.
That would be too easy, though.
That would.
Right. Well, that's another part of the problem with the industry. It's another reason why it's good to be away from it right now, too, is it's a very, and listen, I get it. A lot of industries are like this, but I don't know. Distillation is unique in that really it's a factory job, if you think about it. Okay. But all of a sudden it got romanticized in a very odd way. And that romanization of the distilling industry and of the distiller and of owners, it really swelled up a lot of people's heads in a not great way. And that comes out when times get tough in the distilling industry, for sure. And I can look on social media right now and see a lot of it, and the way that people post, what they're posting, how they're talking. I don't know. I don't think that's a good thing. I think that's it's going to be a very humbling few years for some people, for sure. So,
I mean, you always hate to see businesses fail, but is it bad business, or are they making bad liquor? And that's really
right.
Ultimately what you have to ask the question. I mean, some of it's bad business, I'm sure, but I think the ones that are making the good product, whatever it is, those are the ones that will succeed. Good product will always succeed. You could have bad business and a good product, and your product is still
yeah. Well, and on the small scale, truthfully, the scale we're talking about, like say up to the size of Spirits of French Lick as well, if you're not a good person that can talk to people like a normal person, you might as well get out. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. You got to be able to talk to people.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. So I was just recently talking with somebody, and it was about scheduling somebody on the podcast, and I asked, and they said, well, they're just not really a people person, and you're not in the right industry if you're not a people person, because that's a lot of how you get your foot in the door, and that might be how you get your product on the shelf somewhere is how you present yourself. So, that is kind of a big play into it. So you do kind of have to be a people-minded or a people-oriented to be in the business as well.
I agree 100%. It really, it took me a long time to get comfortable with that, right? I wasn't necessarily comfortable with that when I started at Copper and Kings, but out of the frying pan into the fire, hey, guess what you're doing Wednesday night? You're going to Haymarket to go present our absinthe to the bar and to the patrons and do a tasting. Well, I guess I better figure out some shit to say to make myself sound interesting.
Right.
So, how do I talk to these people?
Right.
No.
Right. Right. And then, I'm from a little bitty town. I'm only, 30 minutes north of Louisville, but I could count the number of times in my childhood I went to Louisville on zero hands because we never went. So not necessarily my target demographic all the time either, in terms of like people that, I grew up around or talk to or necessarily have a lot of everyday things in common with. So you just have to learn to roll with the punches and
Yep.
people are people. Just be a decent person. That seems to be a real problem in today's world too. Just be a decent person. Good Lord.
And being a decent person is such an easy thing to do, but it seems like the most difficult thing to do right now. Yeah, not for everybody, but yeah,
It's
just,
easy. It's easy peasy lemon squeezy. I'm an awesomely decent person.
yeah.
That's what I was telling my wife one day, and some of my friends, they were talking about people that have gotten mad at me over the years. And listen, I have been very guilty of running my mouth about stuff on Facebook, etc. And I get it, but there's also times that, like, and you guys have all been through this too, where like somebody just comes out of the woodwork randomly and just says some shit or starts some shit. I told my wife, I said, it's been like that my whole life. Like, there's just I'm of a certain class of person that my very existence, for some reason, there's just certain people that it just rubs wrong that someone like me even exists in the world, right? And not for anything that I've done to anyone or anything, but just the fact that someone like me exists just pisses some people off, and I don't understand it. I kind of relish it a little bit sometimes because
It's all jealousy.
Listen, you have to. So, especially when you're not portraying something that you're not acting like you're something that you're not that person, but someone still thinks that that's what you're doing. It just blows me away. I've recently have encountered that situation. So, and it's a shame because I don't feel like on any of the podcasts that I've ever been on, I've ever acted like I've ever really know much. I make it clear that I am very new to this hobby and I enjoy the hobby and I love learning. I love every bit of knowledge that I gain from each one of you that I've ever talked to. I love learning that. So, it was kind of funny that someone, was complaining about me that I don't know anything. Well, yeah, I've never claimed that I don't know shit. And I love the fact that I'm learning every day, man. I really, Sean was just over at my house yesterday and we were doing something and it was something simple, but I learned something yesterday. So anytime I can gain some knowledge, to me, is a good day.
Well, I watch all of you guys. Listen, if somebody's doing content on distillation, I've probably watched it at some point, or I will watch it. And what I love is when new people come in, or people who only ever have learned like one backwoods way of doing it, or even one like home distilling advanced way of doing it. I like watching them because I always learn something from it in terms of it's not the way that I would have done it or thought to have done it, but you just spurred on some ideas there. You just gave me an idea of how to tweak a thing that, with my normal wavelength of thinking, I never would have came across that in a million years if I hadn't watched your 3-minute video, that you did in your living room or whatever, there's always something else there to learn. And all the way down to the other thing I'm very interested in too, I meant to mention this earlier, but for like one piece at a time, beautiful thing too about stepping away from the distilling industry is being able to realize, having to kind of reevaluate my connection with distillation and understand really what it is that interests me about the art of distillation, which is everything, specifically the alchemical elements of it. But we're going to start doing a lot of stuff about hydrosols and essential oils on one piece at a time as well, because that's a valid part of this whole art as well. And it's also something that, from a legal perspective, 100% legal to produce hydrosols and essential oils as long as you're not distilling alcohol. And those two things as well can be used in distilled products. So right now, Wayne from Ozark Stillworks is building the first essential oil still that he's ever built, a little 5-gallon model that we're going to make modifications to. And so you'll be seeing that on one piece at a time here in the near future too. So we'll do basic stuff people can do at home, like lemon balm and mint and things of that nature, that you can use for salves and soaps or whatever. But I think anything that gets people interested in distillation in whatever form it is, or interested in general in like a hands-on hobby, skill, trade, right? Things that we might need tomorrow, you know, because shit could go south real quick at any time, ever. So this is one of those things, right? I mean, we know how to make alcohol. All of us here know how to make alcohol at this point, but you know, can you make an essential oil? Can you make a hydrosol? Do you know what the appropriate amounts are? You know, do you know what plants to have what particular traits or aromatics or antimicrobials, etc.? I think that stuff is all valid and relevant too, and you don't see a lot of crossover between the two, so, which is a shame.
Making water for our CPAP machine.
Oh,
Exactly. Or distill. Listen, if you're a distiller, and you've got a nice bricks meter, and I don't mean just a handheld one, but a nice tabletop. You really want to spend all that money on double distilled water? You got stills. Why wouldn't you just distill it yourself, right?
Yeah.
Jug of double distilled water ain't cheap. So,
and you know, we've talked about that in our own little groups. You know, the art of distillation isn't just for making alcohol. If the shit was to get bad and you needed to have clean, drinkable water, now you've got a means to get you some clean, drinkable water as well. So,
yep, exactly. And I've been lucky enough to live through a couple of like little changes here and there that have made me really happy. So, when I first, back when I was a kid, nobody gave a shit what variety of corn was going in that still. They didn't care, right? Nobody cared what variety of any kind of grain was going in there other than to say corn or wheat or rye or whatever. And when I started actually making bourbon at Spirits of French Lick and started pushing my Amanda Palmer corn, and even a little bit before that, because, you know, the guys at Iron Root Republic, I'd sent them a strain of Amanda Palmer, which they have now, which is a Texas strain that's been down there for, I don't know, like 14 years or something like that. I finally started to see people getting interested in grain. You guys were asking grain questions 5-6 years ago on Distillers Talk. To have a distiller willingly talk about a variety of grain was incredibly rare to have happen. So I've seen that change. I've also seen, you know, it go from me being like the one weirdo outlander out here trying to capture yeast in jars and shit to everybody now getting interested in, hey, what kind of weird yeast is in my backyard? What's on that old apple tree over there? Where's an old still side I can get yeast from? So I've gotten to see a few of those little changes happen over time, and they I don't know. I love that stuff. The more involved someone is, the better. And that's what I was driving at earlier. People sending stuff to one piece at a time. It used to be people would send stuff to one piece at a time, home distillers. And the biggest criticism was like, what faults are in it? What flaws are in it? And now it's more, there are a lot less faults than there used to be. There's a lot less flaws than there used to be. It's how alive is that spirit, right? How involved with that spirit were you? And you can tell, right? You can have a great spirit as far as quality goes, but it can be completely dead, right? If the person who made it wasn't really in love with it, wasn't really interested in it, wasn't really putting their passion into it, right? So you have to have that intention in the art of distillation. Thankfully that's changing as well. So people are much more involved in their art, which is great. I love it.
It is neat to see people fine tune their art, and they really want to make it special. You know, everyone. It is wild. There's so many different varieties. You talk about you know, like what was it? Four Roses has so many different mash bills, but it holds true with just even like people making shine. There are so many different ways to make it, so many different variations that people use. Yeah. It's so cool to be handed someone's creation, and you taste it, and you taste something different that you've tasted for the first time, and it sparks your interest. And then you might use it in your own mash, or you might play with it down the road. So, you know, the whole process of learning and experiencing what other people do, it's really cool.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it has so much regionality to it still, right? Like, you know, we've lost a lot of we've lost a lot of cultural regionality to things because of, McDonald's or Walmart or whatever, right? Whatever the commodity thing is, you start to lose foodways and unique varieties of plants or, cooking or whatever. Distillates, not only by person, but by region, they still hold on to those sort of characteristics, right? Even if they're modified to some degree, they still sort of hold on to those, what the tradition is, right? You may have a guy that makes, I don't know, 30 things, and he's from, let's just say for shits and giggles, he's from Kansas, right? But I bet out of the 30 things that he makes, there's one thing in there that is distinctly his little area of Kansas that he picked up from somebody there from the old timers, right? And so it does get carried forward still in that tradition. And I really like and appreciate that sort of thing. You don't see it that often anymore. So.
Well,
yeah, I got to tell you, Alan, the first time I actually was exposed to you had nothing to do at all with distilling. It was about ghosts.
Yeah.
I came across a podcast. I was like, oh, this guy's kind of interesting. And years later, I find out, hey, this is the same guy.
Same dude.
So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that, and that's something that'll be coming back shortly as well as a new season of If You Have Ghosts, You Have Everything. So
nice.
It's something that I love doing. I wouldn't care if no one listened to it. It would be fine. I really do that for myself as much as I do anything, and luckily we've got a fairly dedicated audience, surprisingly. But that's one of those things in the summertime. It gets a little hard to, with the garden and everything, it gets a little hard to keep up with If You Have Ghosts, You Have Everything. So I tried to, for shits and giggles the other day, I thought, man, I need to start on a new episode. I wonder what it'd be like if I tried to do a field recording while I'm riding my bicycle. No, nope. Not happening. Can't hardly hear what I'm saying. Just a lot of mouth breathing and weird noises. It just didn't work. It was a way better idea than execution, for sure. So,
listen, I'll be honest, Alan. I've only known you just for a short time, and I met you through Sean in the Shiner group. But it sounds to me like what you're doing right now, you're getting back to you. You're getting back to a lot of things that you really enjoy doing, and you sound like you're happy, man. So I hope you continue staying happy and continue doing what you love, man. I really do.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that greatly.
All of us could only be so lucky.
Yeah.
That's
well. Can I give you guys I would throw this out for the audience real quick. Just so one of the reasons for the things that I'm doing now and the big changes in my life is because a little over a year ago, and so this is real talk. This is one of those things like, dudes don't really talk to each other in this way very often unless it's just between a couple guys or whatever. But if there's some shit in your life that's not right, all right, and it's not right, you can just feel that it's not right. There's things in your life that that you can't do anything about. You just have to deal with those things and go on. But there's things that that aren't right that you can do something about. I had this weird little existential, call it a midlife crisis or whatever, but one night I'd been drinking a little bit, and I don't know why, I went and I looked in the mirror and I looked at myself, and I had this moment, and I think it's a moment that every man, maybe women too, should have this moment. But I had to stop, and I looked at myself and I said, what the fuck would 10-year-old you think of you now? Right? And sort of internalize that and think about that for a minute, right? And that really kind of put some things in perspective that I hadn't thought about before. Because certainly that version of me would have been like, what the fuck are you doing? Get your shit together, right? Or try to anyways. Try to be a little better than what you've been. So and that's not to say that everything is 100,000,000% better, because it is not. It's an everyday thing. But I think those are important conversations for people to have with themselves. We don't spend a lot of time with that inner realization and that inner dialogue and slow down long enough to do that, right? Rigsby's over there making me look bad, losing more weight than I fucking lost. Fuck.
Well, that's what I was getting ready to. Go ahead.
Trying to fight people and shit. Damn.
I was going to say something about. I can tell you've lost a lot of weight.
Yeah.
So, and I see you've been riding the bike too, man, a lot. So, yeah, talk a little bit about what got you to that again. I mean,
yeah, it was so the logical side of it is like, okay, so I need to do something, and it didn't start off as a physical thing at all. And obviously, I'm sitting over here chain smoking and drinking tonight, which is fine. It's well earned.
That's
well earned.
That's for
well
mental
earned.
health.
That's right. That's right. But it didn't even start off as like a physical thing. It started off with that conversation, right, with myself, my 10-year-old self, and like probably start changing some things in your life because I was getting a little out of hand with a lot of things there. And so the logic of it is like, all right, fat boy, what's the easiest exercise you feel like you could possibly do? But also spiritually, what do you think? Like, what do you think would help you spiritually? And I got thinking, what'd you like doing as a kid, right? That you could still do now, and people don't think it's insane to do. And I was like, I used to love to ride my bike. We all did. We get home from school and be like,
Yep.
I'm getting on that fucking bike. I don't know how many hours I'm going to be out there, how far I'm going to ride, whatever.
Yep.
And it clicked, but it was, I knew I had to make a habit out of it. So what I did was I had this cheap Walmart bike I bought years ago that I thought about riding. I think I rode it like up and down the driveway 2 or 3 times. I'm like, I'm too fat for all this. I broke that thing out and I said, all right, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to ride this bike every day for 2 weeks. When I get home, every single day, I'm getting on this bike, whether I feel like it, I don't feel like it, I'm not timing myself. I'm not looking at miles. I'm just going to go ride this bike. And so I went the first week. The first day about killed me. And then the next day at work was even worse. And then by the third day, you're waking up at like 3 o'clock in the morning with leg cramps in places that you've never had leg cramps. But by the end of the second week, because I kept looking forward to going, in 2 weeks, you can take a day and not do this. I got to the end of 2 weeks and I got home and I was like, man, I'm going to go ride my bike. And so 2 weeks turned into 30 straight days of riding. And I got up to like 15, 16 miles a day or whatever. And I was like, man, that's pretty cool. And then my dad got interested because my dad used to ride a bike when I was younger. He had some nice road bikes. And so he started going and trying to find old vintage bikes. And he found me a 1972 Schwinn Varsity, and we rebuilt that together. And then a 1980s Nishiki, which is a Japanese road bike. By the way, if you're looking, if you want a good road bike and not drop a couple $1,000s on a modern one, those Nishikis weigh about 14 pounds with tires and all. They're phenomenal and super fast. So now Dad spent some money on it. He's dropped some time into it. It's become a family thing in terms of him working on bikes and all that stuff, although I still can't get him on one. I feel obligated to ride, but I also love it, right? And I also realized pretty quickly, when I'm on that bike, maybe I'll spend, let's call it the first 20 minutes. I'll do the hardest part of my route in the first 20 minutes and get it out of the way. Like, just blow my cardio up, blow my legs up, my leg muscles and everything. And there will be a singular thought during that time period. And that singular thought is, whatever is bothering you right now in your life is not as hard as what you are doing on this bike right now. Whatever bullshit you're dealing with is not as hard as what you're doing on this bike right now. And I'll get over that little hump, and then it's literally me in my head, right? And not me in my head questioning things, not me in my head doubting myself, me in my head working through things. And there's never been a day that I've ridden that bike, came home, got off of it, and said to myself, I wish I hadn't done that.
And
not one time.
The cool thing about being on a bike, once you get in your head, you put even more miles in. Like, you'll forget what you're doing and you'll just keep going. See, I used to do a lot of bike riding myself, and it is kind of an escape. You're physically moving, but then you'll get into a mental state where you'll start thinking about something and you won't realize that you're physically doing something, and it'll just kind of you'll lose all, you'll just go, man. So I definitely, I can remember in the beginning you were documenting a lot of your early bike riding, and I can remember you were pissed in the beginning that you would say this shit sucks, man. This fucking sucks. Like you were very clear about you don't enjoy doing this, but you knew you needed to do it, and you got to that spot where you were like, okay, I could go a little farther and a little farther. So I enjoyed your documentation of when you first got on your bike, man. I appreciated that.
I'm glad you did. That was a realization that I had probably last September or so. There was a day, it was just one day, that's all it takes sometimes to change things. There was a day I went out and I did like 25 miles, and it was a day after work. And I remember being like 18 miles in or so before I even realized how far I'd gone. And I was just riding for fun as much as anything. And I stopped and thought to myself, I was like, man, this is exactly why you started riding, was to get to the point where it wasn't even a thought. Like, again, I've posted about this before, but I don't have to ride my bike. I get to ride my bike, right? And then I'm pissed when it's raining or when it's snowing or something keeps me from going, it's necessary.
That's your little piece of time. Absolutely, man.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And just like this new job, I'll be honest with you, and it's not from a technical perspective, but that bike will have improved my distillation 1,000,000% because it's improved my mental health 1,000,000%. And that's going to make a difference in everything that I do in life, for sure. Getting to be home more of the evenings and not be as distracted of the evenings or on the weekends has helped tremendously with being a dad, for example, right? I mean, when you're a distiller, not a lot of dad time happening, to be honest with you. My daughter's 10, about to turn 11. She's at the point now where she needs to have, a little bit of a dad voice that's a little more prominent, a little more present in her life. And so those are all little gifts and little things, and they all spur from that one conversation in the mirror with myself and getting it out of my system, right? I guess you might call it the dark night of the soul, right? The self-realization of what the world is and who you are in it, what your place is in it. And also, what do you value, right? What do you really value, truly? Like, is it reviews, or is it whatever, whoever's blowing smoke up your ass at any point in time? Is that what you really value, or is what you really value the friendships and the community, the family, the important shit, right? Or even worst case scenario with the bicycle, right? Like, maybe I don't want to ride one night, but then I go, man, I got some ice cream in the fucking freezer. I'm gonna ride that fucking bike so I can eat that ice cream. So.
Well, it definitely, it's everyone needs to find that thing that can give them that release, and it seems like you found yours with the bicycle, and it seems like you're in a happy place, man, and that's always a good thing.
Yeah, yeah. And I wanted to say too, Sean, kudos on your weight loss as well, man. That's impressive, dude. That's impressive. It is. For a little while last year, I was doing the bike riding and I was doing push-ups and setups. So I got off the bike and I decided this year, so I'll give you something to laugh at because you guys will enjoy this. I decided this year that I didn't want to do the push-ups and setups because I work all day. So I bought me one of those little mini trampolines. You can imagine my fat ass in my front yard. I live by the highway. Just every day, 100 jumps before I go to work and 900 jumps before I ride that bike. Just one fat dude by the highway in Southern. There have to be people that drive by here and they're like, what the shit is that? What's going on over there?
There's some enjoyment. There's some enjoyment had by someone on their daily drive.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And those people would be the Uncle Joey's driving by on his way to fucking,
Yep. I also got great enjoyment out of this too, because one more and I'll leave you guys be with this. But my buddy DJ, one of my best friends my whole life. He DJ's a funny dude. He'll get interested in things I'm interested in, and he'll make plans, and he may even buy stuff. Like maybe he got interested in distilling several years ago, and he bought some stuff. And I don't know. I accused him of being the only guy that I ever knew that aged low wines because he stripped it, and then I think it set for like a year and a half before he ever redistilled it. So I gave him shit about that for the longest time, and then it wasn't on purpose. It was just that's how DJ is, right? So he's sort of like non-committal to some of these things. But he bought a bicycle. Well, first he had an old bicycle. He goes, man, I'm going to start riding with you every day. I waited like 2 or 3 weeks and he never did. And I finally called him and he went with me and he was huffing and puffing and I slowed it down and everything. And he went 2 or 3 more times. And the third time he went, he was going at it as hard as he could on the gravel portion of the trail down here, standing up on the bike and the whole thing. I was just, going along easy pace and everything, watching him. And I thought, no, I'm going to let him blow himself up and I'm going to fuck with him. So we got into town and got back on the pavement. He's red and sweating and having a hard time. And I thought, yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and lap him. So I went all the way around town and came back up on him. He wasn't even halfway around the little thing there yet. He goes, where'd you come from? I said, I done been around once, man. I said, I'm gonna see if I can't do it again before you get to the other end of town. I caught him on the other end of the town. The second lap.
That's amazing.
And that motherfucker ain't been back out riding with me since then. He bought a new bike and everything. It's just setting. And I say it with the hope that he sees. I say it with the hope that he sees me say this, so that maybe like Sunday he's like, "Hey, you want to go riding?" Because there's always hope. There's always hope. I want him to ride with me. I keep joking with all my friends, like I need a bike gang, right? I mean, you got to have like 3 or 4 fat dudes on a bike to make it really interesting to watch.
Interesting is a word for it, I guess you could say.
Right.
I'm picturing Uncle Joey on a fucking 10-speed right now.
I want to see his fat ass on the 20-inch.
And some good old 70s tight ass fucking shorts.
Oh yeah.
Oh, stop. We're done.
That bike would pass everything but a fucking fence. I'm telling you.
Oh
man!
I'll tell you what. I think the most mad I've ever been in my life, because here's another one for you for as far as fat dudes riding bicycles. Most mad I've ever been was last year. And Sean, maybe you'll get this from working out, etc. But I'm on the bike. I'm going down the trail. I feel like I'm doing pretty good, right? Everybody I've seen has waved at me, etc. I had a fucking professional bicyclist pass me. I don't think
you had the little jersey on.
Yeah, you couldn't have walked up to me and punched me in the face and me be more pissed off than I was when I don't know what there was something about this motherfucker passing me, and I was like, now would be an opportune time for a deer to just hop across the trail.
And see the difference between you and him. He was probably riding like a $7,000 bicycle. You know what I mean? Like you were doing it because you enjoyed doing it. There's a difference. There's a difference there, man. There's a difference.
Yeah. Absolutely. I don't know what it was. There was some ego thing in me that just.
You were hoping a squirrel was going to run straight into his spokes.
Yeah.
Man. Just flip that son of a bitch.
Mm-hmm.
It was your 10-year-old self saying that. That's what it was.
Hey, it probably was. It probably was. Absolutely.
Shit. So
I do like that. I like that. I liked how you said you had a conversation with your 10-year-old self and it kind of changed a lot for you. That's interesting. I
got a question for you, Alan. There's a lot of moonshine festivals out there. Have you ever attended any of the festivals?
So the reenactment group years ago, we did the Popcorn Sutton Jam, and I don't know, it was interesting and it was fun, but it also kind of sucked because we weren't allowed to have our black powder pistols, so it sort of fell on deaf ears. But I do intend to start going to moonshine festivals now that I have weekends, and now that I don't have anybody to tell me, oh, well, that's not really our audience or whatever. So yes, I do intend to go to several of them. So that is on the agenda.
You're not too far from Ohio, but is Farm to Bottle Festival. Something you might you ought to. I'll tell you what, man. That's something you should come to, man. I'll be honest. I'm not sure how many more years this festival is going to be in existence. I hope it continues.
That'd be good.
But I feel like it's kind of it's going up against a little bit of a wall. But there's some really good people there. There's some really good people
Alan,
there.
Wayne and I will come by and pick you up.
It's been talked about. If I don't have to work that weekend, that Saturday, the plan is to go. So,
well, we'd love to see you there, man.
Yeah, I would love to go to it. There's a lot of those I've wanted to go to over the years, and just I either didn't have the time or was expressly told no or whatever the deal was at the time. So, but no, that's on the agenda because, listen, I've always considered myself every bit as much of a moonshiner / home distiller as I ever considered myself a legal distiller. I've never forgotten the roots of where I came from and what it is that I do and why it is that I do it. And I feel like I have, philosophically, I have a lot more in common with those type of distillers than I do 99.999% of legal distillers. 99.9% of legal distillers have never stopped to question why they do what they do and whether or not they actually enjoy it, right? It's very much that ego thing again. So I want to go to more of the festivals. I like to get to know more people. And it's much more authentic than going to a lot of the legal festivals. Truly is. So.
And not only that, like you were talking about,
and all of that, yeah.
Well, and you were talking about, starting to do the classes and stuff like that. That people are going to want to put, well, I don't want to say a name to a face, but get out there and see you mingling around and to just have the time to talk to you, and you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, absolutely, 100%. Now, one other festival that and Sean was there too was the Moonshiners Ball. That Mike Stallings invited me to. That was probably the most fun I ever had at any kind of festival ever. I would say was that. That was a good time all the way around. So,
well, I hope moving forward that we see you at some of these festivals, Alan.
Yeah. I think you will. I think you will. I also one more little update too, just because people watching. So the Practical Distillers and Alchemist Almanac. I wanted to touch on that thing real quick, which is kind of like a farmer's almanac for distillers or people who are into the alchemical side of things. So this year, our publisher somehow, we tried having this thing for 2026 shipped via the U.S. Postal Service, and it got lost. Via FedEx, it got lost. And via UPS, and it got lost. So long and short of it is we got a new publisher, we got a new shipper. Kim got that order in today. So the 2026 physical copies will go out to everybody who ordered one as soon as we get those in. This next year, what I'm going to do. So this is one of the things I've also decided. I've always tried to justify a lot of things that I do by, is it worthwhile because A, you love doing it, but B, also can it make any money? So I've decided that I've got enough faith in people that this year with the Almanac, I'll probably have for 2027 have some physical copies made if people want them, but even the digital version is going to be for free, and I'm just going to have a donation link up. And so, if you download the Almanac and you think it's worth $10, you can send us $10 or whatever, right? That takes out shit getting lost in the mail. It takes out having to. It's just a hassle. You guys know how it is. It used to be. You remember back during COVID, you ordered something off Amazon. It was at your house 24 hours, 48 hours later. Now you order something 6 months later, you're going, did that thing ever show up that we ordered? Is it around here somewhere? Where is that thing? How much money did we just give somebody this past year when we ordered that weird random thing that never showed up? So I'm gonna start doing a lot more things like that. I might even make some of the other books available that way too. Right, to where it's a digital download, and if you want to pay something, then pay something. So, and if you don't, then that's okay, because you'll share it with somebody, or you'll learn something from it. You'll share that with somebody. So, those are those are all things I'm working on now. The 2027 almanac's basically done. I think there's a couple more graphics or whatever I have to do. So I hope to have the digital version of that up probably September would be my guess. So
Well, that's awesome.
Which is cool about those books, man, because one of Sturge from American Whiskey, he kind of got into,
Who?
making liquor and everything. Sturge.
Who?
Oh, your daddy, Uncle Joe. Well, anyway, and he kept asking me questions, man. So I went over there one day and I took that book, I slapped it down on the table, I said, "Here you go. This will tell you more than you'll get from me." I mean, and he was like, so I went over there one day and I picked it up and going through, this motherfucker done highlighted half the shit in. I'm like, damn, man. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, so he's not as dumb as I thought he was. Cool.
No, you're correct. You're correct.
I'm not speaking on that. I'm just telling from personal experience.
What I think would be cool, Alan, would be to see you do like a traveling mash class. I would love to bring you to Ohio and have you do one of your mash classes somewhere here in Ohio. I think that'd be a cool concept to get you to where you could be like the traveling mash class.
I'd love to do that, and I'll tell you what, I'd love to go to Indian Creek and do that.
Shit.
For sure.
Here we go.
So
you're like that's like 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes from us.
Yep.
Hey, talk with
I'd
Joe.
be 1,000,000% about it.
Right
Hey,
down the road.
Joe is awesome, man.
Yep.
Well,
that's
you don't. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. You're good. You're good.
I was gonna say, if you ever decide to do that, you already got a place to stay. You don't.
Oh yeah.
So.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's
Alan. You
that's
definitely
something I want to do.
To stay here.
Oh yeah, yeah. I want to touch on those markets that don't get touched on a lot, and I think Ohio is one of them. Right? I think the same reason for doing a Pennsylvania whiskey is Pennsylvania is a little older than Kentucky and probably deserves a little more respect than what it's gotten. There's a million Allen Bishops in Kentucky, for whatever that's worth. So, I would love to do that.
I don't believe that, Alan. I don't believe there's a million Allen Bishops in Kentucky because I don't feel like they're as concerned with the fine details as you are. You are like you said, you are that perfectionist, and I don't think everybody is like that.
Could be. It could be. I don't know. Kentucky's got a good publicist. I'll say that. So, but no, I would love to make it to Ohio and do that. That would be really cool. And I think that that's stuff that will happen in the future. Especially as I build this Stoneham Day thing up. I think there's some really unique opportunities. And I think that I'm as excited about, to be honest with you, I think I'm more excited about the idea of Stoneham Day not necessarily having to be a full-time job, right? That it can be a little bit more of that escapism, doing the odd things. I don't know. I think it just fits. It fits, right? If I'm not distilling at home, obviously, then Stoneham Day becomes like that second home where you get it out of your system and you do the things. And I think going to the moonshine festivals, I think doing mash classes, I think traveling a little bit. Those are all things that once I hammer down this job and get it to where I'm, on the full-time roster, as it were, and hired in where I can make sure I've got health insurance and everything, then I think those are really distinct possibilities. And again, I plan to continue writing, podcasting, etc. may not be as often as what it once was. Cause when you're putting in 12 and 13 and 14-hour days, sometimes you get home and that's about all she wrote. If you go in the house, sat down in the chairs. So,
absolutely.
But, hey, that's what weekends are for, right? So,
oh yeah.
Well, listen, we won't take much up more of your time tonight, Alan, but I definitely can say for myself and everybody here, we really appreciate you giving us your time. And I think we're all going to see a lot more of you in the future. I think you've got time and you're going to be able to get out and do the things that you love doing.
Yeah. I look forward to hanging out with all you guys, and thank you guys very much for having me. I appreciate it. Hey, anybody watching, like I said, go to stolenwolf.com. I think the Wolf and Wilson is now shipping, like I said, to 48 states. it's you know, it's a $80 bottle, but it's a $80 bottle that is worthwhile considering what went into it, including Eric and I letting the cheese culture go a little bit farther than we should have on the first fermentation and sacrificing some alcohol, and it turned out something that just it never be replicated. So, and that was one of the barrels that went into this blend. So,
Oh yeah,
Awesome.
get a bottle of it, and we'll keep making weird colonial shit for you guys.
Nice.
So,
Hell yeah.
well, hell yeah. Well, I appreciate everybody for tuning in. Thank you for America and Moonshine for joining us tonight, which I'm a part of. Damon and Tom. Tom's dealing with some health issues with Ginger. I hope she gets better, Tom. We hope nothing else but that.
absolutely, prayers sent, man. Prayers
Yeah.
sent.
But I appreciate everybody joining tonight. You guys have a good night.
Good
You
enough.
guys.
Night.